Welcome back, everybody. We are here again for a really amazing episode of Xennial Mindset. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a business lean. We have a very amazing guest, our new friend, Dan, who's with us. So Dan and I were introduced by another podcast host, which is so fun because when you get to go on other podcasts, you learn about brand new topics, and then you get introduced to amazing people. So Dan and I are new in our friendship, but I'm super glad that you jumped in here and did a little something different with us. Dan, I'm going to kind of pass it over to you. You want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your business, and then we'll dive into your Xennial Mindset.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So my name is Dan Henderson. I was born in 1979, which puts me right in the middle. We are a family of serial entrepreneurs. We actually own a few different businesses. We own Allified Merchant Group, which is a payment processing brokerage, Buffalo POS, which is a point of sale system, front end focused technology company. Henderson Real Estate, which is a private real estate brokerage here in Buffalo, New York. The lifestyle brand Home with the Hendersons, which encompasses all things that wrap around the house: home, family, finances, food, things like that. Our daughter owns a cake company that she started when she was 12 called Tay's Cakery. She is now 18 and she is heading into the event planning space with a company called Blush Peony Events. We have a son who is 16 years old who's wanted to be an engineer since he was 7, somewhere between mechanical and electrical. So he's heading into that field. And my wife and I have been married it'll be 20 years in September.
What? That's amazing. Congratulations. That's like Anne Marie. She's also in. Go for it.
What day in September? Oh, awesome. We're the 4th, 20 years.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you guys too. I have a quick question before we jump in. That is so many businesses. Holy moly. I didn't even realize that when we were reviewing your portfolio. How come so many businesses and the kids at such a young age already involved and wanting to kind of explore and do their own thing? I'd love to hear more about that.
I forgot to mention we also homeschool. We're a homeschool family on top of that. So and that's it's actually provided us the opportunity for our kids to be able to see mom and dad working from home and then experience exploring some of their interests as well. The reason for multiple businesses, back in the 2000s, we used to own a painting and construction company. And we carried a 10-week backlog year-round, which at the time was almost unheard of. Everything was really great. Then the market crashed. And if you've ever been in a business like construction, it is feast or famine. And when the economy goes down, people don't need their houses painted as much as they need to put food on their table. And so we found out very quickly how our lives could be turned upside down. Now, at the time, we were asked if we took credit card as a form of payment for customers that still wanted to get the work done but wanted to put it on a card, and we didn't. And so we went looking. We went to private salespeople. We went to local banks. Nobody would give us a straight answer on what it cost. So we decided to start a business in that industry, so at least we would know what we were paying. Then it turned out being when we reached out to friends and family that nobody had a clue what they were paying. Everybody was paying too much, and it provided an opportunity to create another business. That business is somewhat recession-proof in the sense that when the economy is down, businesses are looking to save money. We can do that. When the economy is up, businesses are taking in more money, and we're paid a residual income on a small portion of it. So that allowed us to grow that. Real estate was something we had always had an interest in. Coming from the construction world, my wife loves design, interior decorating and design, and so we knew we'd get into it at some point. Fast forward to 2016. We had friends and family coming to us and asking us to go with them to look at houses because the realtors just weren't doing anything except opening the door and letting them in. And I ended up squaring off with a realtor and the listing agent and the engineer that they hired, arguing over a house that I had called out had major foundation issues that they were all trying to brush under the rug. As a result, turned out being I was correct. And I looked at my wife and said, now it's time to go into real estate as well. So we tend to build businesses in areas and industries where there's a disservice being done, or we feel we can build a better model to bring honesty and integrity into those industries. And that's what we do.
Yeah, I am completely obsessed with this. I think when we had this first conversation, I brought up like this is Xennial at its very core, right? Like we have this X generation who just like think, is that the right one? Is it X or it's X? All right, so Generation X people who were just like, go out there, hustle, make a thing happen. And we have our millennials who are like innovative and what are we going to do? And how do we solve this problem? And Dan, like, I just all encompassing of what a Xennial is, taking an issue that you see and having enough confidence that we'll go with to say, we're going to start a business to be able to solve this problem. I absolutely am obsessed with this idea. Not only are you doing it for your community, but now you've created a bigger impact for, the business world. And you've already mentioned that you're doing this with your kids. And that's great. Like they can see this happening, they can see this innovation. And I assume that they probably will take their own spin on what their businesses look like. And I think it's just really impactful. Not only Zennials are impacting business change, but to have that confidence to like showcase it to your kids over and over again. So those things were the things that came up for me. And I don't know if you thought about that before we had a conversation. Like this is a generational, like kind of this
Definitely
mini
not.
generational. Yeah, go ahead.
I definitely, I never really, I just kind of took it for granted, I guess. I never really sat down and thought about it until we talked about it. Yeah, the hustle and grind from the previous generation mixed with the innovative thinking from the following generation, combining those two is it's an incredible catalyst because I feel like we have this current issue going on now where people just aren't willing to do either on a massive scale, which is why so many businesses are hurting for good help. We have. So we still have an opportunity to be able to share those things with the current generation and try and encourage them. And that's really what we've done with our children. We taught them the value of a dollar. What does it take to earn? Our kids started by they wanted to sell lemonade, right? Every kid does a lemonade stand out front at our old house. And they were doing construction. They were doing repairing the roads near us. And we were like, hey, if we go and buy a case of Freezy Pops and you go out there in a 90-degree summer day and sell Freezy Pops to the guys that are working on the road, you'd probably make a couple of bucks. Well, at 4 and 6 years old, they were pulling like $45 a day. So I mean, it was fantastic, and this was kind of the spawn of it. We started with our kids, teaching our kids that there were certain jobs around the house you did because you live here. It's part of your responsibility as a family. Everything after that, we didn't believe in an allowance. We believed in a commission structure. So other jobs had additional opportunities and each one had a commission base. And so if you want to make more money, you go and do that. If you don't do those jobs, you don't make money. And so they were learning that. And then they went from there and said, well, what can we do to make more money? If we want to do something outside of those things, we already did them. And so they were doing everything from dipping pretzel rods in chocolate and putting sprinkles on them and selling them in the neighborhood to what ended up growing into my daughter's cake business. At 12 years old, she was looking to do something. We got pushed into not pushed into, but ended up in homeschooling as a result of finding out she's dyslexic and the school she was going to wasn't equipped to help her. And so while we were homeschooling and getting her the tutoring that she needed to be able to learn how to read, she had taken an interest in doing something. And in this case, it was cakes. And so she got some tools and stuff for her birthday. And it turned out being the kid had a hidden talent we knew nothing about, which then she began to create her own recipes, her own buttercream, her own cake recipes, and it grew into this business. And she's been on the news. She's been in the local papers. She's been honored by a handful of different organizations. And a lot of this started with teaching them not to expect, but to earn. And that was that hustle that we had given them with their own innovation.
I love all of this. We're homeschoolers at my house. My kids are 12 and 14 right now. Same, my 12-year-old daughter is obsessed with baking and cakes. And putting that into this next generation is a gift for sure. The other thing I think about is that hustle that is out there is what really up levels people, because we have so many people in a generation between, kind of millennials and like maybe Gen A, somewhere in there, where I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I'll just kind of open it up as a conversation. And Anne Marie, I'm sure you have ideas too, but like, why isn't that a thing? Like, why wouldn't they want to go out and like create something new? And how do we instill that not only in our own kids, like we're homeschooling, to help the other generations that are in our world? And some of that has to do, I think, with the people that we have as contractors in our business. Like we have an effect on those people. We also have an effect on the community that we are a part of, whether you're going to church or whether you're in other events that are happening, and kind of instilling and up leveling a community or a generation that sort of seems like they're beaten down, like they're almost scared to go out there and like put their ideas. So any thoughts on that from either one of you?
I'll give you one because I've seen this float around on social media the last couple of months. I wish I had it in front of me. I wish I had saved it because this would have been perfect. If I could find it, I'll send it to you. But it was something along the lines of, when kids are little, we encourage them to dream. But the minute we put them into the school system and out into the workplace, we squash those dreams and tell them to conform. We don't encourage them to dream. As an entrepreneur, I understand that failure is part of success, right? As long as you're failing forward, you're okay. However, a big portion of our society, our culture, believes that failure is not okay, right? And this was something I struggled with in grade school because I was dyslexic, had no idea. And so I struggled through a lot of my classes and felt like a failure because my grades were low. And it turned out being that it was because I wasn't learning the way that I understood. And so when we started homeschooling, we saw the opportunity to really kind of customize the curriculum to our kids' interests while still falling within the required guidelines. We really jumped on it because we saw an opportunity for them to learn. I think part of it is culture thinking that failure is bad. I think another part of it is we are so distracted today that we've lost the fundamental base where all this comes from, and that is from the home. You have very busy families, you have very busy kids, everybody has busy schedules. If they're going to school, not homeschooled, you have 7.5 hours of schooling followed by 3 to 4 hours of homework. Then you're trying to mix in extracurricular activities, sports, things like that, instead of taking that time and investing that time into them starting at a young age and encouraging these type of things.
I'm going to jump in. Sorry, I was just looking for my unmute button. So Dan, I don't know if Marie told you, I have no children, but I have a lot of thoughts on this specific topic. I can agree with you more about the education system. I've had several conversations with people. I also think it has a lot to do with the society we live in today, upbringing, sense of entitlement. I think, as if I look at specifically my family, like if I go back to my grandfather, he came to Canada from Italy. He wanted to do better for his family. He provided for them. And that goes on to my father's generation and then my generation. Everybody wants to do more for their children, right? Are we still recording?
Yeah, right. We're still recording.
So everybody wants to do more for their children, right? And I think it's the definition of what that more is very different for other people. Like for you, it's teaching them those values, right? And going out there and being creative and, and I think that is phenomenal. And I wish if every parent out there could be like you, the world would be a better place. I'm probably going to get some negative comments on that.
But I think, but I appreciate the comment.
Yeah, no. And I think, that's what's important. If, I serve on a lot of different boards, and as part of my role on those boards is really to work with the younger generations and really set them up for success, because eventually we're going to step out of the workforce and these are the people that are going to take over, right? But what I'm realizing is that they don't have that drive, right? And when I have conversations with them, it's really about their upbringing. It's about the family, their upbringing. It's about the school, the education system. So it's, I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing that in today's generation. We're not seeing that drive, But there are, I would say, those diamonds in the rough out there that are like hopefully going to be the leaders in the future and, set the precedence for every.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with you. I mean, each person's situation is different, right? And while homeschooling has worked for us, we have plenty of friends in our homeschool community that some of their kids learned better going back to a public school or to a private school. So the biggest thing that we found, and one of the things that we encourage, is just being involved with your kids, having a relationship. I have to put a pause on that, though, because I feel like our generation also had this issue where they were trying to be best friends with their kids, and then they lost sight of the parent-child role. And I think that's where a lot of this disruption came from. Again, like you said, every generation wants better for their kids and their next generation than they had it. And that's honorable as long as you're still teaching those generations to hold their own, to learn, to earn, to stand on their own 2 feet, to contribute. That's another thing. We've got this sense of entitlement issue going on, and it goes hand in hand with this kind of selfishness that we see a lot. And one of the things that we, ever since my son was young, I would teach him to hold the door. If we go to some place and somebody's walking in, hold the door for him. And after a little while of reminding him, it got to a point where he did it naturally. And, same thing with looking you in the eye and shaking your hand. It's become a lost art, both of those. That's terrible. Whether you want to call it chivalry, whether you want to call it, being a gentleman, it was just being kind. Being nice to people and serving other people. And I think that's one thing that needs to continue to be passed on, that's getting lost, and people have this sense of entitlement as a result.
Well, and I think like that whole idea of opening the door or saying hello, I think that is the human touch that, especially over the last, you talked about 2008. We had 2020 that came through, like that human interaction of knowing that another person is thinking and caring about you is probably the reason why we have such a mental health issue in our societies as
Absolutely.
well. It's like, this is just being kind. Now, when you were off of your phone and you weren't like walking down the street trying to figure out all the things that were happening on your cell phone all the time, you could look at somebody and you could say, "Hey, Dan, I don't know where I'm going. Can you give me directions?" And like, that's where we're coming from as a generation. Like, we're coming from like, just stop and ask. My daughter, I'm so thankful that this is in her. She does it all the time. I'll be like, going around the store trying to find the whatever. She's like, "Can't we just ask somebody?" And I was like, yes we can. Let's go talk to somebody who works here and
talk to a human. That's right.
Talk to a human. And those things are what's really going to up-level relationships for other people. Like in our business, the business that Anne Marie and I work on, it's relationship driven. We are so reliant in partnerships and relationships that we have to have conversation, and we need to remember about certain things, because that relationship collateral is what really up-levels our business. And I'm sure you see it in the businesses you're creating. Like, you're getting feedback from
Absolutely.
all of these different people to know, hey, there's a problem here, and it's not just me, it's other people. Now we can create an impact by like building new businesses out of it and have the confidence to do that. So like all of these pieces come together to not only the current generation to have that confidence to just be real with other people and not have the filter of your physical phone in front of you. That's where we can up level. Like, if you go and look at me on social media, you won't find anything, because I just decided 5 years ago I want to live with the things that are happening around me. I don't want to filter it through a social media lens. And there's just kind of this dynamic that I see. And I agree, we have to get back to that. And Anne Marie, although she doesn't have kids, she does have nieces and nephews and people in her community that she's a big part of their lives on the boards, and her family. Like, there are all the ways to impact that doesn't require you to have like kids you're rearing at home. And it takes everybody. Like, my sister doesn't have any kids either. My kids would not be who they are if they didn't know their aunt and uncle. And that's the big
part. It's human interaction, right? Like, humanity was designed for community. We were not created and designed to live in isolation, which is why 2020 was such a disruption to the human psyche and to our community because we weren't built for that. And then and on top of that, then we had to add in, the fear of interacting with other humans, which took us a little while to get back to some normal interaction. You want to talk about generational differences. My wife's grandmother, who passed away a couple of years ago, she was in her late 90s. She used to talk all the time about how she couldn't stand going to the doctor's office and sitting in a waiting room for an hour and nobody talked. She said, 20 years ago, pre-cell phone, pre-smartphone, really, you would sit in the doctor's office for an hour and you would chit chat with the person next to you. You might have magazines or something that you read, but you talk to those people sitting there. And she would complain. She was like, it was so weird. Like every time I would try and talk to them, they would just, and then they go back to their phone. And so the next generation has it even worse than we have it now, but we're the ones that are going to help them navigate. We're fighting all of these things. We're fighting the phones and the tablets. We're fighting social media. We're fighting digital media. We're fighting all of these things that the next generation is going to have exponentially because of the way technology is evolving, that is doing everything that it can to destroy human interaction, including artificial intelligence. I mean, we're not even going to go there, but you know what I mean? Like now people, because people do have a longing for interaction, but now their interactions with, Siri or Alexa or one of these, I got to be careful saying that because something's going to turn.
Don't say the words.
Yeah, don't say it. We call her, hey lady,
We call her chatty at our house. They're all chatties.
They're all chatty and they're all listening. Maybe they'll get a hint from this. But yeah, no, seriously, like people just don't want to, they don't know how to interact or they don't desire to interact the way that they used to. And that's a big part of the problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. I'm going to switch the conversation a little bit back to the business side of things. We talked about your background. We talked about, how you started your businesses, your multiple businesses. Tell us who your biggest influences are or mentors in the business world or in any world.
Where to begin? So again, I struggled through school, right? So I went 4 years to a 2-year college, still never graduated. I sat in business classes, listened to professors talk that had never owned a business and thought there had to be a better way to learn this. And so I went out and I actually started getting jobs in areas that I wanted to learn the business side and or got a discount on something I was already going to buy. And so I got to experience a handful of different industries and through that started to stumble on what they used to call self-help books, which are now really just alternative learning. Authors like Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which, most of the world has now heard of. My kids have listened to the book. They listened to it years ago when we first started homeschooling. That had a huge impact on me because it took me outside of the thinking. I mean, I grew up my dad was a policeman. My mom was a nurse. So one went to school and one went to the town and municipality. And so growing up, it was really go get a job with the town or go into the military or do something. Education was never really a big part of our family and upbringing. And so I had to go and figure out how to learn that. And so it started with finding books like that and listening to, and then getting around other business owners that I looked at as successful, some of which I found through church. The church that we were going to at the time, started to learn from those guys, the good and the bad. And truthfully, one of the things that I had found, and maybe I need to start a podcast someday, was entrepreneurs and business owners. They like sitting down and talking with people and sharing with them. They like doing that and pouring into people that are inquiring. And so that was where I kind of gravitated towards. It was, hey, this guy, I see him as successful and he's willing to sit down and tell me what he did, tell me a story. And so I would say those were, some of my bigger influences.
Trying to find the mute button. There it is. Okay.
Yeah, there.
I love that. And just being able to ask other people around you about business that's happening. My parents were entrepreneurs back in the 80s. That's what I did growing up was I was helping with the business. Most of that meant as the oldest child that I was babysitting all the little kids, but that's the visibility that I had. So it's great because you get this support from people who have businesses around you. And that's essential as an entrepreneur. Like, you have to have other people who say, yes, this is okay. I remember on my side, my in-laws had no idea that you could make money online. So when I started my business 10 years ago and I was staying home with a 2 and a 4-year-old, they were very confused about how I was paying for all of the things to stay home. So it's great to connect yourself with other people in your community and make sure that our kids have that as well. Along with these resources that you had, anything that you would suggest to our audience, especially people who are thinking about entrepreneurship, especially with Zennials. Like, if you aren't an entrepreneur yet, let's like open the door that that's a possibility. Maybe let's give them one resource that you could say, if I had this at the beginning, it would have changed everything.
Oh, see.
No pressure. Just kidding.
Yeah, no pressure. Well, first I would say, if you're thinking about it, think big. Again, kind of going back to our conversation about the world squashing your dreams. Dreams without a plan go nowhere. So it's good to think big. It's good to plan out, and of course, the most important thing is do something, execute. Right. So I would say absolutely. Audible, what a great tool. We used to have to buy all these books on CD. I've got mountains of CDs of books. Now I have subscriptions, and you know how many books I have, 200 or 300 books in there that I've bought in the last handful of years. Get on something like Audible. That's a great tool to use. I hesitate to suggest things like Instagram and YouTube, because I think this is a breakdown. Because I just had this conversation with a gentleman who sent me his grandson to work with for investment properties. The two the two ingredients for success are hard work and good decisions. Right? We're going to have days where we feel defeated. We're going to have days where we feel lazy, and we're going to make bad decisions along the way. That is life. But those two things are the key ingredients to success. The Instagram, YouTube influencers, we'll call them, that are all, it's easy, get rich quick. And, in 2 months, I made $1 million on this thing. Can it happen? Sure. Are there algorithms and softwares out there to make it happen? Sure. The probability of it happening, slim to none. Most of them are standing by somebody else's Ferrari taking their selfie video. So hustling, hard work, those are the things that are absolutely necessary. Finding influences like authors that have done it, proven it, getting on podcasts like this, listening to and watching people who have actually done it, and then asking and learning, bouncing the ideas off. Find somebody that's successful, that you see as successful, tell them about your idea and ask for their opinion. Humility. Humility is a key to this too. If somebody, I get people all the time that ask me, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business. What do you think? And I'll give them my honest opinion. I'll be encouraging. But at the same time, I'll ask questions if I think that this could either bankrupt them, in a hurry, or might take them down a road that they're not prepared for yet. You got to be tough to be an entrepreneur. And I always say it was the best move we ever made for our family, and I wouldn't wish that pain on my worst enemy. That's entrepreneurship in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love all of that. And I think I want to highlight a little bit. You didn't say, go get another degree. You didn't say, oh, you should have a PhD. You didn't say, go get this certificate on this certification and take this education. It's like none of that. I know Anne-Marie's the same as I am. None of my degrees have anything to do with the fact that I have a very successful business, that I can homeschool my kids full time, and that I love what I do every day. None of that has to do with a degree program. And I think that a lot of times when we're talking about Zennials, they're kind of back and forth, right? Their parents assumed that they would go get a degree. So then they think that they are a failure because they didn't. And that's just not true any longer. So we're just going to...
story of my life.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, I had family. So I had mentioned that education wasn't real big in our immediate family necessarily, but I had extended family that literally hounded me up until like a couple of years ago. I mean, I'm 44 and a half, almost 45 years old, and I still had family that was like, well, that's great that you have these businesses, but when are you going to go to college and get a degree? I was like, wait, no, what? 20 years ago when we started on this venture, I had nothing to defend it, other than, well, I think this is what's good for me and my family. And now once in a while I get asked for a job from the people that ask me about getting a degree. So, listen, education's important if you're going to go into a field that it's required and it's necessary. I would never want to hire a lawyer, an architect, an engineer, a doctor that didn't get properly educated in those fields. However, the idea behind you have to go to college the minute you walk out of high school or you're going to be a nobody is garbage. I had a buddy's father that told me, oh, you're not going to get at least a master's degree. You're going to be a loser your whole life. That was a driving force for me to get up every day when I didn't feel like it and go out and get it done. Nothing fuels me more than somebody telling me I can't. And so that was a mental shift that I
That's
had
that
to.
Gen
It was a
X
hurdle I
coming
had
up
to get over.
out of you right there.
Oh yeah. But it was.
That's like,
I'll
don't
tell you
tell
what, it
me
was
no.
hard. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
tell me. You tell me no, it's as good as done. But it was hard to. It was a hard hurdle to get over because until you start seeing success, it's in the back of your mind just playing like a reel over and over and over again. You're just going to be a loser if you don't go this other direction. Give up on your dream and go follow, get in line with everybody else. And that's
Yeah.
garbage. I think it's total garbage.
Yep.
Sorry,
Absolutely. I
getting
love this.
riled up
No,
now.
it's okay. I love a soapbox. Let me tell you, that's why we have people on. That's why we do those things, because people need to hear that. And I think that we created Xennial Mindset around that. We want to hear your story. We want to hear your guidance. We want to hear from you. So Dan, I'm just going to thank you for being here and being open and just sharing some of your wisdom. I think the things that you've said are fantastic, and we're going to send it out there into the world and hopefully somebody gets something from it. We will have you back, I'm sure. Anne-Marie and I already love your energy, and hopefully, you do start a podcast and you do go out there because of the experience you had here. So thank you again for being here and being a part of this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been
Thank
great.
you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thank you for what you guys are doing. I think that this is learning opportunity for people, and a great way to connect, obviously. But I think you're addressing something that even for myself, I've never really been able to put a finger on. I knew from the in the background who I was, but I was never able to really identify it based on that generational shift. So thank you guys for doing this. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dan.